Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 30 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is controlling your mind. Our quote of the day comes to us from John Alston. If you don't control your mind, someone else will. Today's episode is sponsored by thebilliondollarbody.com. Men, are you looking to up-level your business? Are you looking to meet and connect with highly influential people? My good friend Nicholas Bayerly is hosting the #1 men's event this July 14th, 15th, and 16th in San Diego, California. Billion Dollar Body Live. Hear from expert entrepreneurs and surround yourself with like-minded men. Go to billiondollarbodylive.com to get your ticket. Once again, that's billiondollarbodylive.com. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode, as our guest shares his very personal no-quit story. I've had the honor of meeting a lot of great people through these podcasts, and it is my privilege to introduce Jason Malo. Jason, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate you spending some time with us. So when we were talking before the show, I mentioned that the #1 objective of our show is to motivate and inspire people to never give up. We found that so many people find themselves on the 2-yard line, and they have the option of either giving up or keep going. Sometimes people give up, but a lot of times people keep going and push through to the end zone for the touchdown. I wanted to ask if you have a personal story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and never quit.
I do. And actually, this is kind of perfect timing that I'm on this podcast right now, because I'm kind of still in the middle of that situation, or getting hopefully towards the tail end of it. But I'll give you a little bit of backstory. My brother and I own an auto repair shop in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. And we started our business in 2006. Pretty challenging time to start a business, actually. That would be the first no-quit situation. Was about 6 months after we opened our doors, the whole economy fell apart. So got to be real challenging. Lucky for us, the industry that we're in is an industry that people need to visit regardless of what the economy is. Most people need a car to get around every day, so we didn't get hurt as bad as, say, people in real estate or other things, but it was definitely a challenging time to be new in business. So we stuck through it, and 11 years later, we're still going. But we've had a few rocky situations happen over the last couple of years, and that's the situation that we're still in at the moment, the no-quit situation for us. So over the past couple of years, the first thing that happened to us was we were outgrowing our facility that we started the business in. And the landlords at that particular building had been promising us for the first 8 years that they were going to sell the building to us, and they were going to sell it at a great price, and we were hoping that we'd be able to expand the space and expand our business. So we finally got to a point where they had been avoiding our conversations about purchasing the building, and we outgrew the space, and we were having to turn customers away because we couldn't physically get them through the shop. And so we finally sat them down and had a conversation with them, and they said, okay, yeah, we'll get you a number. And after 8 years of paying them pretty good sized amount of rent and being promised that we were going to get a phenomenal deal on purchasing the building, we get a number back from them, and they say, well, we had talked to a couple realtors, and they're telling us the building's worth about $450,000 to $500,000, and we want $699. So we were kind of like, whoa, thanks for the great deal. And not only would we have had to pay $200,000 over the market value for the property, we would have had to put another $500,000 into the building just to make it useful again. And so we ended up making a kind of quick decision. We found a phenomenal place, a few buildings up the street from where we had started, and we moved into that space June 1st, 2015. Just to give you some kind of context, we moved from a 4,000 square foot facility into a 12,000 square foot space. So we almost tripled our size in one quick move. Luckily, we found an awesome landlord, and our rent didn't go up 3 times what it was. And he's been a phenomenal help to us business-wise, and so that's been a great scenario. And during this whole time frame, we were also sued by a former employee, and that was a whole mess in itself. But long story short, it was a huge hit to the business, and so we've been digging out of that financial hole for the past couple of years. And when you're in an industry like ours where profit margins are extremely tight to start with, and then you have a huge hit to your business like a lawsuit, it takes quite a while to dig out. And so we've been on a very tough financial razor's edge for the past couple of years. And we, back 4 months ago, in addition to all the stuff going on with the business, our dad was in very poor health, and he'd been fighting cancer for about 1.5 years, and towards the end, it was getting pretty rough. He was in pain, and so it was challenging. We were trying to run a business which was already struggling, while at the same time trying to spend time with our dad and, help out with his whole situation. And it was really a tough struggle at the beginning of this year. And we both almost called it quits multiple times. We did end up sticking with it. Our dad, unfortunately, ended up passing away in the middle of March. But business-wise, we, took the time we needed to spend with our dad and to handle all of the things related to his passing, and then really sat down and looked at the business. And we had sat down with our accountants, and they had told us, well, you're kind of in a tough position, and you might want to consider going bankrupt and closing the doors. And after really working hard for 11 years, that was not something that we wanted to hear, but we knew it was accurate and it was good advice. So we did consider that as an option, and we decided after a lot of conversations and a lot of hard thinking, and we just decided, nope, we've put all this time and energy and money into this, we're going to make it work. We had to make a lot of hard decisions. We had to lay off one of our 9 employees, and cut some expenses, and really work with the remaining employees to get everyone on our team focused on pulling ourselves out of this hole. So in the beginning, I mentioned that we're hopefully at the tail end of that. So the last 2 months have actually been the best months we've ever had in business. And it's coming on the tail end of when we could have easily given up. So that's the gist of the story, and still in progress.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your candor with that story. I wanted to just send my condolences. I did not know that your father passed in March, so please pass that along to your brother as well. But I think your story resonates with so many small and medium-sized businesses where you get hit with different things, and unfortunately, you obviously can't always control when you get hit with them. So I got to ask the follow-up question is going through what you're going through with your business and with your landlord and potentially the conversations with your accountant as well as the health issues with your father is add that onto everything else which is tough in life. How did you keep going every single day? What motivated you to keep going and persevere to the level you have today? And kudos for the last 2 months being your best. I think that so many times people get pushed right to the end, and those people are rewarded by doing the right thing and keep going hard. So I'd just love if you could share for a minute or so as far as how and why you kept on going every single day.
So that's a multi-part answer. The first part of it is I was lucky enough when I was in my early 20s to have my uncle, who I was working for at the time. He owns an automotive dealership, which is where I got a lot of my experience. And when I was in my early 20s, he sat me down and he said, if you really want to make something of yourself in life, you need to focus on improving yourself on a regular basis. And he recommended that I start listening to audio tapes. And that just tells you my age, right? I'm 42, so 22 years ago or somewhere in that ballpark, we were still listening to cassette tapes. And he gave me my first set of audio tapes, and it was by a gentleman named Earl Nightingale from Nightingale Conant. And the name of the program was called Lead the Field. Not sure if you or any of your audience have ever heard of that. If you haven't, you should definitely check it out. It is a phenomenal program. And for those of you who don't know who Earl Nightingale is, he's one of the founders of Nightingale Conant, which is the company that is largely responsible for all of the personal development that's out there today. They started out selling audio tapes and then transitioned to CDs. Now they do MP3s, and a lot of people like myself kind of got hooked, and so I used to buy all their programs. So for the last 22 years, I've really been paying a lot of attention to personal development, and I know that that's a big thing for you guys. And so I'm really glad that I get to share the experience with somebody who relates to that. So that's the first thing is I'm a lifelong learner. I constantly pay attention. I'm constantly listening to audio, reading books, trying to get around people that are like-minded. And so being in a good mental state myself allows me to kind of really frame things that are happening in my life and look at them maybe from a different perspective than I would had I not been focusing on these things for 20 years. I tend not to get flustered too easy. I don't get very stressed easy. I can usually put things into perspective and say, okay, this is a challenging time right now, but I've gone through challenging times in the past, and it'll get better in the future. Now, this current situation, especially, where my dad was sick and everything, that made things a whole lot worse. That was a new experience for me. I've never lost anyone close to me. So losing my dad was a first in that area, and it was definitely a very hard thing for me to go through. That being said, I definitely learned a lot through the experience. And the other big part to how I've been able to kind of keep going is I've surrounded myself with people who are amazing people. Starting with my family, I grew up in an amazing household. My parents were both amazing, and I have 6 brothers and sisters, so we have a huge family, and so we had lots of support. And I'm consider myself very lucky in that area because I've heard so many horror stories about how other people have grown up, and I honestly can say that I'm one of the lucky few people out there who had a really good childhood and had really great parents and a great family. So having all that family support, and then my long-term girlfriend, she's amazing, and all of my staff members and employees at the business, they pitched in and helped. And so I've just got a lot of great people around me, and I think that's by design. The family I got lucky with, but the rest of it's by design. And I think that that's something that is necessary in order to be able to pull through these types of situations. I'm sure you and all your audience can probably relate to being in a situation where you're so far down the depression hole, or you're in such a bad place that you just literally don't have the energy or the drive to pull yourself out of that without any help. And those are the types of situations where you really need good people around you. And I've been extremely blessed in having amazing people around me.
I appreciate you sharing some of that. And one of the things we talk about, obviously, the personal development component is we've kind of coined the term the self-improvement movement, and we believe in you can control what you put into your mind. And it reminds me of a famous quote by John Alston is, if you don't control your mind, someone else will. And I was very fortunate to have Tom Ziglar, who is Zig Ziglar's son, on one of our early episodes, and he talked about, and his father obviously always talked about, is you can control what you put in your mind. You can't always control the situations that you encounter, but you can control your mind, what you read, what you see. And I think you bring up a point as far as with the audiobooks, and I'm a few years younger than you, but I've been a big believer in audiobooks and putting things into your mind that will help you. And they're not just business, it could be personal, it could be relationship, it could be spiritual, whatever it is that floats your boat in regard to that. It's important just to make sure that you continually feed yourself with things that are going to help you. And I think you brought up a really interesting comment a couple minutes ago is we all have that opportunity where we encounter, whether it's depression or a tough time, and it's the people around us that really can help us out of it. So you obviously had quite a few different mentors and a good family, and obviously you referenced your long-term girlfriend, which is really neat. So I appreciate you sharing what you said. One of the things we do, Jason, is we always talk about a daily quote on our podcast, and we're big believers of different quotes. And I was curious if you yourself have a famous quote or a favorite quote that you live by or that you just like.
I've heard a lot of the ones that I like actually been referenced to in the past episodes on your show that I've listened to. I don't know if I have any one particular quote, but I do like the one that you bring up a lot that says never, never, never give up. And I think that sums up your podcast, and it sums up the reason that I came on your podcast, because I really like the fact that is the one thing in life that we can control, and trying to think of a good way of phrasing it, but our attitude, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, is towards the situation can be controlled. That's what Zig Ziglar was talking about. And same thing with whether or not we give up on something. You haven't failed if you haven't quit. So the situation I mentioned about my being in my business and the challenges that we've been having is our business isn't a failure until we give up. And so if you never, never, never give up, you don't fail.
I will send you that check for that nice plug in regards to that. No, but all jokes aside, is I could not agree more, and obviously that is why we've not only titled our podcast No Quit Living, but that's why our company's name is No Quit Living as well. Kind of going along some of the same themes that you talked about. If you could go back, Jason, and give your 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
There's a lot of things, but probably the biggest would be to focus on creating the life that you want versus accepting other people's version of lives they think you should have, and or not realizing that we're as powerful as we are and that we have the ability to create the lives we want.
That's a great piece of advice. If you wouldn't mind me asking you a little different spin on the question, is if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Nikola Tesla. And there's a lot of reasons why, but he's one of the most intriguing people I've ever read about or learned about. I think he was a genius beyond comprehension in a lot of different aspects. I think that he truly understood how life and the universe works and how everything is energy. And he could take that understanding and create a vision in his mind of an invention. And he worked out all the kinks and all the bugs, all mentally. And almost every invention he ever created came out perfect the first try when he physically built it, because he had gone through all of the processes of debugging it mentally. And so when he decided to bring it into reality, it was perfect on the first try. And he's a figure, in my opinion, that got left behind in a lot of our history books and things because of, a lot of different reasons, but political things. And he was overshadowed by Thomas Edison, and they were a big rivalry. And Edison was the business, political kind of guy, whereas Tesla just wanted to create amazing things.
No, that's now, isn't the car Tesla named after him?
I would assume it is. I don't know the exact backstory, but yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I believe I read something about that and I'm not sure the specifics of it, but I think it was something to do with along the lines of the perfection component, and I think that's what I remember reading. So maybe we'll fact check that to make sure on the show. One of the things our listeners are into when we talk about on the show, to follow from your point of the audiobooks, is personal development. And a lot of our listeners are looking to improve different areas of their life. I was curious if maybe you either had a favorite book or something that you read recently that had a positive impact on your life.
So I've got thousands of favorite books. I guess my number one top recommendation for people just across the boards is a book called The Go-Giver. The author's names are escaping me at the moment, but it's
written by Bob Berg. He was the guest number one actually on our podcast. He's a very dear friend, and I've recommended giving that book to him.
I didn't even know that. I haven't gotten back that far.
No, it's funny you mention that, but it's a great book, and they just, not to cut you off, but they just released the Go-Giver Leader about a year or so ago. So we've recommended Go-Giver, and we'll now do a recommendation for the Go-Giver Leader also. But continue. I apologize. I didn't want to cut you off, but but definitely check out the first episode, because Bob is a good friend, and he's a great mentor of mine.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that would definitely be my number one. The book that really two books that really made a huge impact on me when I was newer in the self-improvement part of my life was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which I'm guessing that's probably been mentioned on your podcast before. And then Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Those are both phenomenal books in their own right. They were, Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, is the starting point for a lot of other people. I believe even Zig Ziglar mentions being influenced by that. And Robert Kiyosaki, he just has a totally contrarian way of viewing things and he's just so direct and to the point and simplifies complex ideas into very easy to digest pieces of information for you. So.
I appreciate those recommendations. 3 great books: The Go-Giver, Think and Grow Rich, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I actually just recommended Think and Grow Rich to 2 gentlemen that are in my mastermind group. on Sunday night, and one of them had read it, the other one had not, and I myself am actually rereading that Think and Grow Rich myself. So I think it was written in the 1930s, I believe, maybe 1940s, and it's lasted this long, and it's just filled with some great stuff. Well, listen, I wanted to ask you a question. Is before we let you go, do you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I guess along the lines of your podcast, the No Quit Living, in the sense of, never giving up. And based on my own story, which I shared earlier, when you're going through a situation like that, oftentimes people don't know that. If they don't know you really well, they're not real close to you, they probably don't know what you're going through. And on the flip side of that is, we don't know what other people are going through. So I guess the best overall piece of advice I could give to anyone, regardless of who they are, is be kind to people. You never know what they're dealing with in their lives. And your reaction or your interaction with them could mean the difference between them pulling out of the hole that they're in if you're kind to them, or if you say something mean or unkind or treat them unfairly or any of that kind of stuff, could be the difference between them ending their life or something crazy like that. So be kind.
That's probably one of the best closing pieces of advice we've received, and that obviously goes hand in hand with the go-giver. And one thing we talk about quite often on our show is the point you just mentioned, is not so much not knowing exactly what somebody's going through, but the idea of being kind. And the word kind and being kind can mean different things. It could be something so simple as holding the door open for somebody. It could be smiling at somebody. It could be paying for somebody's toll or buying somebody a cup of coffee. And you are 100% right. You don't know, Jason, what someone else is going through it, and neither do I, but they also don't know what you're going through. So the whole karma, I believe, comes back in so many ways. And if you go out of your way to be nice to somebody and to help somebody without something hidden agenda inside, but if you do it because you're a good person, I firmly believe that it's going to come back tenfold. And it might not come back to you. It might come back to you or your children or your parents. But I believe that if you go ahead and do the right thing and be kind, you might make that unbelievable positive impact on somebody. And might not be something as drastic as them not ending their life, but it might be the very significant difference of them having a horrendous day versus them having a great day. So I cannot thank you enough for that. So one quick question to you is, for those of our listeners that are in and around the Massachusetts area, wanted to make sure that you could just give a nice little plug of your business. So hopefully if people are around the area, they will pop in and say hello to you.
Definitely. So I can be contacted, or you can check out our business at our website, theautodoctor.net. That's all spelled out, theautodoctor.net. I can be reached directly by email at jason@theautodoctor.net.
Well, listen, Jason, I truly, truly appreciate you've added some great stuff to our listeners. And you shared a very personal story, not only about your business, but also about losing your father. So I truly appreciate it. And as I mentioned in the beginning of our show, is our number one objective is to help motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. So hopefully your story resonated with some of our listeners. And I truly, truly thank you for both your time as well as your candor, and definitely look forward to connecting with you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, Chris. I really appreciate it.
To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, controlling your mind, Jason shared some true value with us. While building and growing his auto body business, Jason and his brother were hit head-on by adversity. With a major expansion tripling their size, a lawsuit from a former employee, and the unfortunate passing of his father, Jason had every reason to give up. It even got to the point where his accountants strongly recommended bankruptcy. While most people might have thrown in the towel at that point, Jason didn't. He kept on going, kept fighting, and decided that no matter what, he would make it work. He was proud to announce that these last 2 months have been their best 2 months ever. Jason also spoke about the importance that personal development has played in his life over the last 22 years. As advocates and huge supporters of the self-improvement movement, we could not agree more. So the question we pose to our listeners is, what do you put in your mind? What is it that you are reading, listening to, and/or watching? We invite you to please come along and join the self-improvement movement. In his parting words, Jason shared the value of being kind to others. He was very specific that we all don't know what challenges, struggles, or obstacles other people are going through, but we can all be kind. So the challenge for our listeners today is to be kind to someone and expect nothing in return. Hold the door open for a stranger. Smile at someone. Be kind, and perhaps you might positively impact someone's day or their life. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.